Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Notion Rental Sales and Labor CRM tutorial series. This video will cover the orders database as well as the accounts and contacts databases. But really, we'll be going over the orders database because the accounts and contacts are super simple. Starting with the accounts, just to get it out of the way, I think the only thing that needs to be said is that you have a few different categories to organize the accounts you have. They are new account, which is the one that will always default to if you don't specify which one you want. New partner, which would be another company you don't really purchase from or service in any way. Maybe you both work together on jobs or something. New customer, which is when this account will give you money for your services. And new vendor, which would be a company you buy from. Let's choose new customer for the order that we'll be making in this video. Starting from the top, you'll see the relationship you have with this account and if they have insurance. Should you choose to take insurance seriously, I've built this property that you can tell you if they are close to being expired or if they're good for the time being. If we go into the hidden properties, we would be able to type in the policy number and the expiration date, which feeds into the insurance info property. It will tell you if the insurance is up to date, if it's expiring in 2 weeks, if it's expired, or if there's nothing recorded. So let's fill out the basic information for this account really fast. We also have a gross and net income calculator for this account, adding up all the orders that are marked as done from the orders database. Same with the net income, and using those numbers we can derive a profit margin. Moving down, we have quick buttons to create new items that are linked to this account, which should be self-explanatory. And next we have all the orders associated with this account in the current year, any purchase orders associated with this account and their statuses, and if you want, you can see all the orders associated with this account regardless of date. Finally, we have a list of all the people that we know who works for this account. Every single template in the accounts database is going to look like this. The only difference would be if the account is a customer, vendor, or partner. Moving on to the contacts database, we're going to see a similar story to the accounts database where we have an overview of all of our contacts, except in this case, we can see there's a filtered view in this tab that only shows pinned contacts. You also have the hidden categories here being do not contact and retired. Should you find someone you don't want to associate with in your business, you can mark that here. Same thing if someone you work with has retired and you no longer need to contact them. Moving to the templates, it's a similar story to accounts, so let's create customer account. As you can see, it's very similar to your accounts database where you've got all your gross income and all the related accounts, orders, purchase orders associated with this person. Since people would have their own information separate from the company they work for, you can put in personal contact information here should you choose. So let's do that now. Moving to the body of the page, we have our quick buttons and the related account. Okay, and now moving on to the main course of this video, the orders database. When we click on new reservation, it will do a bunch of things. It will make a new order with the proper template. It will create a page in the warehouse database linked to this page so that we can track where gear is. It will create a bunch of to-do list items to keep you organized and on schedule. And it will create 2 pages in the shipping database. Now we'll come back to that in a moment. Some things to note about the to-do list items. The due dates are related to the dates on the order. So the item give items to client will be due on the first day of the rental, and the receive items from client item will be due on the last day. As for the pull order item, it'll actually depend on how many items you have in the order. If it's less than a certain amount, it will be due on the day of pickup. If it's more than a certain amount, it will be pushed back to the day before or even a few days before to give you plenty of time to prep for customer pickup. Anyway, let's actually make our new reservation. Welcome to your first order. The first thing I would recommend is to name the thing. I'd like to put the order number, which would follow the ID property right here, and then give it whatever naming convention you want. Today we'll do Christmas party. Let's say I look at my emails and they want it for Christmas Eve, so we'll say prep on the 22nd and 23rd, party up on Christmas Eve, and I guess we'll break down on the same day. Moving down, we'll see days in week and billing days. Now, this is my default standard, but you can do your own if you want. You'll just have to change the parameters of the new reservation button on the home page. Now, this system is a bit complicated, but useful if you want granular control over how your items are billed during the rental term. Days in week will determine how many billable days in a real 7-day week you want to actually consider. So if we do 3 days, only 3 days of a 7-day week will be counted. With this predetermined week, you can further specify how many of those days will actually be counted as days billed for your items. So, for example, we have 3 days in this order. Within the current parameters, if we have items going out on the 22nd and returning on the 24th, that's 3 days out of your possession. We need to make sure that the gear is seen as out of inventory for that period, which we are, but what if you want to only bill for 2 days, making pickup day the 23rd free? You would change the billing days to 2, and it would bill not for 1 day in the week, but 2. If you wanted, you could bill for only 1 day per week if you had a rental that was out for 4 weeks. Depending on the size of your rental and how long the gear will be out, this may be a good option to stay competitive. The way you would do this is to put 7 in days and week and a 1 in billing days. You only bill 1 day per week in this case. On the opposite end, if you wanted every single day it's reserved and out to count towards your billing, you'd make both these properties 7. Moving on, you've got your insurance information here when we add our account to see if it's expired or not. Of course, it wouldn't be because we just made that account. Then project type, you can make these your own to fit your needs. Next is a bunch of financial properties. Every item you add will have a predetermined category that will be rolled up into various subtotal properties. Some of these will count towards your net, but some won't. Your rental subtotal will, but if you have sub-rental items, that would not count towards your net. Neither will anything related to shipping and handling or hotels, since I'd consider that you're charging the client whatever it costs you to ship an item to them or to put you and a contractor up in a hotel. As for miscellaneous, this will count towards your net income and can be whatever you want it to be. That's not a rental item or a labor charge. Should you sell an item, for example, that would go here. When you have a profit margin of less than 100%, it's because you're paying someone else, and that number will go to amount to pay others, just to give you a sense of what exactly your cost of doing business is. Next is the warehouse status, which is just a roll-up of the warehouse status. You'll be able to tell at a glance if all the gear has been given to the customer or not, if it's been returned or not, etc. I like this replacement cost here. It's a roll-up from all the purchase orders you would have used to buy new inventory, adding up the cost of the items that have been placed in this order. That way, you know what the net worth of what's leaving your possession. If you've got damaged items from the order, they would appear here, and this property and anything related to the warehouse will have its own video to explain how it works, but for now, just know that damaged items will appear here. Tax rate. If you don't want to charge your customer taxes, then make sure this is checked, but if you do, enter your tax rate here and it will be added to the gross income, but not your net income since you gotta pay taxes and all that junk. Let's do a 7% tax rate for now. The last thing we will look at is the accounts and contacts properties, which show up as page sections. So let's add new pages we made earlier so we know who we're dealing with here. Alright, that about wraps up the main properties and the first things you should do upon making a new order. Let's move on to the fun stuff, adding things to your order and watching your gross income go up. You've got your rental items section here with everything relating to the stuff you're renting, and then you have your labor section below that, and then a miscellaneous items section here right at the bottom. To the right, you have your quick buttons here, which will be how to add basically anything to these databases. The buttons add connections and relations necessary for the workspace to run smoothly, since there's a lot going on and too much to keep track of yourself, so I'd recommend using them as often as possible. And we have the to-do list for this order here, if you want to keep track of the auto-generated ones or make new ones for yourself. Okay, it's time to start adding items. The best way to do that is to use the button New Rental Item, which will add a page to the items build database. This database will do all your pricing calculations, show what the quantity is, and show what the status of this item is. The items build database is connected to the inventory databases and is used whenever you rent out gear or buy something with a purchase order. It's a big database with lots of properties, and in this view we're only seeing pricing information. So let's add an item header, which is how we'll actually determine what in our inventory we're pulling from. And if we want to add notes to this line for whatever reason, that's how we'll actually use the name property, which is renamed as notes. You'll notice once we add an item header, the available property changed to available. This property will tell you if there's any problem with the item you're working in. So if you try to quote more than you actually have, it will tell you. It will even tell you if there's an overlap between an existing order and this one. It will always prioritize the order that was made first. So if I want to quote 2 small lights for this order, but an existing order has overlapping dates, this property will tell you so you don't double book yourself. So now that we have our first rental item, I'm going to add a few more. And final note, before we move on, if you notice, we have 2 buttons here, add and minus days billed. For whatever reason, if you want a given item to bill more or less days than the rest of the bunch, this is where you would do that. For example, if you had a truck with the package and the package was renting for 3 days in a 7-day week, for example, you could bill the truck for the full 7 days since presumably they're putting wear and tear in the truck. You have to consider fuel costs and insurance, whatever your reasoning may be. We have a 3-day order, so we'll just make this 3 days. Now, we don't actually have a truck in our inventory, but in the purchase orders video, we'll solve that problem. Now, that's the quote tab. Moving over to the shipping tab, you can specify where the pickup and drop off locations are and the times that they will happen. If it's different than the beginning and end of the rental dates that you put in the dates property on this order, this is where you would specify that. If it's the same, then the start will be the beginning of the date range, the end will be the end of the date range. You can add new addresses through the button here, and then add new lines to the database by clicking the new page and going through the name property. But for now, I'll put in your address, assuming that the customer will drop off and pick up everything themselves. Then we'll notate that in the ship via property. Moving to the warehouse tab, this is another view of the items build database that shows you the status of your items, whether they are filled, out, damaged, when they were shipped, returned, reported missing, and what specific item actually left. For example, you may have 2 powerful lights, but only one was called for on this job, so which one actually left? Finally, we have a missing damage view, which is yet another view of the items build database, but only showing the problem children of your order. Hopefully, there's never a single time you need to view this, but knowing how people treat rental gear, there will always be something, and you can keep track of it here. So that's the rental items section. Below that is the labor section, but that's actually beyond the scope of this video since it requires some explaining. This video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to come back to that in its own dedicated video. For now, we're going to add you and an assistant to this job just to have some example data to work with. The missed item section is pretty easy. It's anything that isn't a rental item or a labor charge. If you sell something or add a charge for a delivery or something like that, it would go here. So for example, using the buttons on the side, let's charge this customer for mileage for getting ourselves to the job site, hotel rooms for you and the assistant, and let's say a kit fee for using personal equipment while on the job. Now finally, we have a completed order. We have everything filled out, and if we click on View Details up top, we will see how our subtotals break down. It looks like we have a profit margin of 70%. At this point, you would click New Quote and send it off to the client, but I'll be covering quotes and invoices in its own video, so for now, let's just say that we quoted the client, and they got back to us saying that they approved the rental. We'll end this video by clicking the Confirm Reservation button, which changes the status of the order to approved and active, and all the rental items from quote to reserved. That way, it will show up on your home screen as rental items you now need to take seriously. Okay, well, that's all for now. Thank you for watching part 1 of this series. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care, and have a great day.